The mystery of space weather. In a small village nestled among green mountains lived Isabella, a 10-year-old peasant girl. Every afternoon, she and her grandfather listened to music on an old radio while milking the cows. But one day, the radio began to make strange noises. "What happened, Grandpa?" asked Isabella. "I don't know, sweetheart, maybe it's one of those solar storms that scientists talk about." Isabella opened her big, curious eyes, but a great curiosity arose in her heart. Solar storms. But the sun is so far away. That night, as she looked at the stars, Isabella thought, "How can the sun affect my radio here on Earth?" And as if the universe had heard her, a warm, bright voice appeared. "Hello, Isabella. I'm Solín, a ray of sunlight. Let me tell you a secret, the sun doesn't just give light and heat. Sometimes, it sends huge solar storms into space, with particles and magnetic fields that travel very fast, more than 3 million kilometers per hour. That fast? Isabella was surprised and put her hands to her head. Solín took Isabella on an imaginary journey through space. From there, she saw satellites floating like silver lanterns. "Look, Isabella," explained Solín. "These are satellites. They help us talk on the phone, use GPS, predict the weather, and even watch TV shows. But when a solar storm hits, they cause interference, the satellite signals are disrupted, and in some cases, they lose communication and must be protected by turning them off for a while." But suddenly, bang! A solar flare passed nearby. When a solar storm hits, the satellites get confused, some may stop working, and even the GPS signals on phones fail. Solín showed her a huge floating graphic that looked like it was made of light. "Look, Isabella," he said. "The sun has periods when it is calm and others when it is very active. Like when someone has energy and then gets tired?" she asked. "Exactly," Solín replied, laughing. "When the sun is more active, more sunspots appear, and that means there's a greater chance of solar storms." Isabella remembered. That's why Grandpa's radio sounded weird. Suddenly, Solín touched Isabella's shoulder. "Do you want to see how this affects your planet?" They floated gently down toward Earth. From above, Isabella saw many things she had never imagined. First, she saw airplane pilots changing course. Solar storms also affect radio communication on airplanes, especially those flying near the poles, said Solín. When the sun sends out many charged particles, radio signals weaken or are lost. That's why pilots have to divert to safer routes. Solín pointed to the map of the planet floating before them. "Look, Isabella. Here is Colombia. See how the sun shines differently in each region," he said, pointing to the colors on the map. "How beautiful. There's a lot of yellow and red in La Guajira," said Isabella. "That means the sun shines more strongly there, which is ideal for obtaining solar energy. Every place on Earth receives a different amount of light, depending on its climate and altitude." Then she saw farmers looking up at the sky with concern. They depend on satellites and weather forecasts to know whether it will rain or not. If a solar storm damages the signals, they can lose climate or soil data, and that affects their crops. Beyond that, Isabella observed astronauts inside a space station. They are also affected by space weather, explained Solín. That's why, when there is a major solar storm, astronauts must take refuge in protected areas of their spacecraft so they don't receive too much radiation. On an energy screen, Isabella saw colored bars going up and down. "What's that, Solín?" she asked curiously. "It's the KP index. It tells us how strong a geomagnetic storm is. When the bars are red or yellow, it means that the Earth's magnetic field is receiving a lot of particles from the sun. And if it's green, then everything is calm," Solín replied with a smile. In another city, Isabella saw electricians and power grid operators checking cables. When solar particles hit the Earth's magnetosphere, they can create electric currents on the ground. This damages transformers, turns off lights, and causes blackouts. And in homes around the world, ordinary people feel it too. GPS, radios, cell phones are disrupted, or simply, the internet connection disappears. Suddenly, the dark sky was painted with green and violet lights. "How beautiful!" Isabella cried. "It's the northern lights," said Solín, "a gift from the sun." "Why do these magical colors appear?" asked Isabella. "Look, Isabella," explained Solín. "The particles sent by the sun travel to the Earth's poles, where the magnetic field guides them as if they were rivers of light. When they collide with gases in the air, such as nitrogen and oxygen, the sky lights up with different colors. Green and red come from oxygen, while blue and violet come from nitrogen. So the sky is painted with the colors of the air," said Isabella in wonder. "That's right," replied Solín. "Every aurora is a dance between the sun and the earth." Seeing how excited Isabella was, Solín took her back in time to show her that it wasn't just a story, there were real people who saw something very similar. "Isabella," said Solín, "did you know that more than 150 years ago, something similar happened in Colombia?" Isabella opened her eyes curiously and shook her head. In 1859, a great solar storm, called the Carrington event, painted auroras in places where no one imagined seeing them. At that time, the North Magnetic Pole was closer to the equator, and the storm was so strong that the lights of the sun were seen even in the Caribbean. In Monteria, Colombia, the priests of the cathedral wrote that the sky lit up with tongues of fire and dancing S-shapes. I'll tell you that the inhabitants, frightened by those lights they had never seen before, ran to the church to pray, believing it was the end of the world. But it wasn't the end, Isabella. It was the sun greeting us with all its might. Then she added in a bright voice, "Do you know anything more beautiful?" That event was so impressive that it inspired the author of the Colombian national anthem, who wrote a verse recalling those lights that illuminated the sky. "Spill forth the dawn of your invincible light." So the anthem also has a little piece of the sun, said Isabella, surprised. "That's right," replied Solín. "That line celebrates strength, hope, and the light that always returns, even after the storm." At dawn, Isabella returned to her village. The radio was still crackling, but she was no longer worried. She looked up at the sky and whispered, "Thank you, Solín. Now I know that weather isn't just here on Earth, it's also in space." And from that day on, every time her grandfather said, "The radio isn't working," Isabella would smile and reply, "I'm sure it's the sun sending us a greeting." Thanks. The end. Educational epilogue. What is space weather? Space weather refers to changes that occur in space due to the sun's activity, such as solar flares, solar wind, and coronal mass ejections, CMEs. These events can affect satellites, communications, power grids, and even astronauts in space. How do we protect ourselves? Thanks to solar observatories run by NASA and other agencies, solar storms can be predicted and precautions taken to protect electrical systems and people.